Throughout my childhood, I came across a lot of different TV shows. Some were amazing, some were awful, and some fell in the middle category. But there were times when I tried watching a mediocre show purely on the strength of an amazing introduction that the show didn't always live up to. So, in honor of my childhood, here are the top 5 intros that were too good for their shows to live up to. Number 5. Archie's Weird Mysteries. Here's a bright idea. Let's try to turn Jughead into Scooby-Doo. Now, to be fair, the show had its moments, but it just wasn't enough to top the intro they had.
What's that sound? Archie's mystery. What is going on in this town? Archie's mystery.
To my mind, the intro's music does a great job combining an 80s-style rock song with the haunting sounds of a spooky mystery show. I instantly liked it when I heard it for the first time. As for the show itself, I never got much into it. In fact, the most I really remember is how much I loved watching the theme song play out. It was really cool to watch. I think another problem was that I was just never an Archie comics fan to begin with, so I didn't realize how big this franchise was until much later. All the same, the intro was really good. Number 4. Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. Ah yes, Mystic Knights, a spin-off of Power Rangers set in the world of ancient Irish mythology. The show focused around 4 young warriors who fought the evil Queen Maeve using magic armor. It's just as silly as it sounds. But to be fair, it wasn't awful. It was a co-production with Ireland, they referenced actual mythology in the show, and most of the actors actually were Irish. The problem was that it was eclipsed by an amazing intro. For a guy who's always had a soft spot for Celtic music, this was an intro like I had never seen before. Okay, so even the intro isn't as good as the first 12 seconds or so, but honestly, I still love the hell out of those 12 or so seconds. And while the show was action-packed and clever at times, it just had a better intro than it could hope to match. Number 3. Darkwing Duck. Yeah, I'm sorry to the fans of this show, but it just couldn't live up to the intro's promise. It wasn't for lack of trying either. I followed it for quite a while as a kid. But ultimately, the only thing that really stuck with me was the intro to the show. But here's the problem. Listen to Darkwing Duck in the intro.
Let's get dangerous.
But listen to him in an actual episode.
Oh, regulations. Well, okay, here. Fine, there, see? I said...
It just doesn't match up to what the show seems to be delivering. And so I gave up on the show. But I never did forget that intro. Number 2. Sonic Underground. Yep, Sonic Underground. I've never been a big Sonic fan, if that explains why this is on the list. But there was a time when I tried watching Sonic Underground. The reason for that being this intro. It was the first time I'd ever even heard of Sonic, and this intro impressed me big time. Listen to this, it's fantastic stuff.
Triplets born, the throne awaits. A seer warns of a deadly fate. Give up your children, separate. Bide your time, lie in wait. Sonic Underground, Sonic Underground. They made a vow their mother will be found.
Unfortunately, that epic 80s power song was really hard to follow. The show just wasn't good enough to do it in my opinion.
Sonic Underground. Sonic Underground.
Now this one needs a bit of explaining. When I was a kid, this was one of my all-time favorite TV intros. Most of you have probably never heard of this show, unless you lived in Ontario and watched TVO. But bear with me. My number one choice for this list would have to be Crow.
Crow was a smart boy, had a lot on the ball, but the family that took him in was total Neanderthal.
Crow was a short-lived TV series about a woolly mammoth named Phil, voiced by the legendary Jim Cummings. Phil spent thousands of years frozen in the ice until he was resurrected by a scientist and her assistant. The two of them get to hear stories about Phil's adventures with the other mammoths, a saber-toothed tiger, a family of Neanderthals, and of course, a young cave boy named Crow. The show was actually meant to be educational while pretending to be just another children's show, and yeah, the episodic lessons were not very subtle for the most part.
Look!
What trick?
No trick. How hard you push on this end is multiplied, so you can lift more on this end.
Yeah, that's it.
But honestly, I still kinda like this show for nostalgic reasons. And regardless of nostalgic goggles, this intro does everything that an intro is supposed to do. It explains the show's premise, it's catchy as all hell, and it makes us want to keep watching. Even though the show seems to have all but disappeared, it will always hold a fond place in my memory, if for nothing else than that classic intro.
And an Ice Age